that's why Keaton is so much more popular than Chaplin now, because we live in an age of cool, not warm.
Yeah.
And Buster Keaton is has that ironic distance.
Yeah.
That cool, his stone face, of course.
Yeah.
And so he's more in vogue.
Yeah.
Than Chaplin. Chaplin is my god.
Yeah.
I grew up
I love Chaplin.
At a different time, but I don't. We've talked about this before. I don't cotton to conversations about who's better.
Yeah,
That's just ridiculous.
No.
Two giants, two titans.
Once you can mold something that really works, I mean, that's why we kept reoccurring things on SNL so much. And when you reoccur it, it became a template that you wouldn't stray from.
Sure.
You just were going, no, that works because it's hard to. It's this word alchemy that has to work.
Familiarity does not breed contempt.
Yeah,
it's the opposite.
Yeah, no, people. Opposite. Anytime we would do a sketch and we would try to mess around with it, we would always go, well, this works, and Lorne Michaels would always say, why are you changing it? And we go, well, we're getting bored. And he's like, well, you gotta keep it to what it is, so don't change it. What are you doing? The audience needs to know. It's comforting for them to know where they're at. I remember watching the making of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and seeing that, how they made that, and watching, just seeing stills of John Ford and the Stanley Kubrick and all these people, and you went, wow, gosh, I was so naive. I thought what I was watching on a movie was the first choice. Like, they went, okay, let's go do Jaws, and this is exactly how it's going to go. And they went, that was great, Roy Scheider. Okay, next. Well, there's no trial and error. There was no things that didn't work, whatever. And so when I was on set, I saw how messy it was, and kind of it knocked the romanticism out of me. And I went, wow, okay. And then once I got Saturday Night Live and actually started creating, it was like kind of going through it all again. I used to think, oh, you'd sit down to write a movie and you were like, Sunset Boulevard. He's got the pencil behind his ear, writing in that thing. And there's something really kind of romantic about that vision. And no, it just is work, You're just sitting there, writing on a napkin and going, I don't know, he says this, I guess, go out and do that. It's just work. And so that was the biggest thing. Understand the practicalities of it. And that the best direction as an actor and the best writing, everything is just simplicity. Is just kind of going like, what is the simple thing? What's the simple emotion? What's the simple feeling? And now you go back and you watch movies and you go, oh, why it works. I always find even the most kind of complicated, even Tree of Life or whatever, something that might feel complicated. There's a finite emotion that you kind of hook into. And you go, oh, that's what this is. Oh, that's cool, but getting to that takes 20 different avenues to get to that thing,
South Park is largely about structure, as you said, underpinning the comedy.
Yeah, I was a writer. I've been a writer there, for 10 years now. That was solely just because at SNL, you're just learning sketch comedy, and sketch is really difficult. But South Park's like, they're so brilliant at structure. So learning that, I would go in there and watch them. And kind of what I was saying just a minute ago of like the simplicity of the emotion. The amount of times they go, what's Cartman's emotion here? What's Kyle's emotion here? What they taught me was everything has to be causal, meaning you can't have an outline and say this happens and then this happens and then this happens. It has to be this happens, so therefore this happens. Like Cartman says, fish sticks, there's a misunderstanding. Therefore it becomes a big joke. But then Kanye hears it, and because he doesn't have a sense of humor, therefore he gets mad and tries to, everything has to be causal. And if it's not causal, you get rid of it. Yeah. So it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's it's like we're laughing a lot, but we're also banging our head against the wall.
Yeah.
I've gone in on Tuesday. They have to turn in the show Wednesday morning. And I've gone in on Tuesday, and Trey Parker's said, oh, I just threw out the show. And we were like, okay. So we got to start over. And it was like, cool. And then what you would do is you would sit there and say, okay, PC principal does blah, 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 and this happens. And then Trey would go, let me go write that. And he would go write it. and then come back. We'd talk for another couple hours. We'd have lunch, and then Trey would come in, and then the head of animation, Adrian, would come in and go, "Hey, do you guys want to go see it?" And we go in, and it's fully animated, fully done. Their voices are in it. What we just came up with 3 hours ago, and you watch it and go, "Okay, cool." And I should also state, like, I'm in the room helping, and kind of, I just laugh. I realize I laugh a lot, and I go, "Well, that doesn't make sense." I go, "Wait, what does that mean?" And and that's about it. And every once in a while, I'll say a joke, but it's mostly those two guys.
So talk about directing then. This is something you hoped to do, aspired to do many years ago.
Yeah.
And now you finally have directing credits under your belt.
I know, it was awesome. It made me happy. It was really sweet. My high school girlfriend, who I haven't spoken to in 15 years probably, just emailed me and said, "I just saw you directed. That's so awesome. That's what you wanted to do when we were in school."
Nice. That's nice.
And I was like, "Oh, sweet." It was great. And it made me, again, like anything, you make something, and then the minute it's done, you always go, "Gosh, I wish I would have done that." That funny story of Billy Wilder watching The Apartment, and they're in the back going, "Oh, he should have done this." And you never stop. You can't turn it off.
Of course not.
And so at the premiere last night, I couldn't even watch it because the whole time I know I'd be like, "I don't." But if we get to do more, that I'd be able to, try to get better at it.
Yeah, well, it goes back to Chaplin.
Yeah, Chaplin, where he would do it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And his was those gags that he would work on. And I have the opposite problem where I kind of just go, "Let's just do 3 takes," and
the Clint Eastwood way.
You
have 1 take, do it, you're done now.
But that's what I would do 3, and I remember my editor would go, "Okay, so the scene with you and Sarah Goldberg, she did 7 takes, and they're 7 great takes, and they're great for 7 different reasons. You did 3 takes, and you got your lines right in 1. So we have to use that take." And he goes, "When you go back to shoot, can you shoot some more coverage of yourself?" Because I would just kind of go, "Okay, we got everything great. Oh, yeah. Turn around on me. Moo! All right, let's go." It was a bit of a... Alec Berg found it funny that I, as a comedian, my biggest weakness probably is I don't know how to write for myself. If you watch the first couple episodes of Barry, I don't say anything. I don't do much. I'm kind of just observing people. And it was HBO and Alec who were like, "You should start to do stuff. You should kind of maybe drive the story a bit, don't you think?" And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, you're kind of the main character. You should probably do stuff." There's this thing where comedy can't be cinematic, and I feel like it really can be. Mm-hmm. And there's a thing of, you see a lot of comedies, are kind of flat lighting, bright. Mm-hmm. There's all these kind of rules that you need to have. Wearing your brain on your sleeve a bit and that it's okay is nice. And that's another thing in comedy of like, well, we want to be, really inclusive. And what I liked about those, my favorite kind of comedy is you just get a sense that the people making it, this is what they find funny. Mm-hmm. And you come to it when the minute it tries to, like my daughter said, he wants me to like him. I kind of react, but I don't know. Yeah, I love that. I love that we're able to make that show. John Mulaney and I, when we first met at Saturday Night Live, we had a huge, we connected on The Burbs in a big way. And another movie on my list, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, that was the other one that we connected on. And we would sit and watch those in my office at SNL on writing night. When we were supposed to be writing, we would just sit and watch those movies. What always struck me about it was the humor in it was so specific, and it felt like a movie where Joe Dante and the people involved were just trying to make themselves laugh. It had no real rules comedy-wise. It kind of, everything was thrown out. It didn't have, like John Hughes' movies had this similar thing like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, where you could have very grounded jokes, but then have super surreal jokes.
Oh yeah.
And now having done this, I know that you can't have John Candy dressed up as the devil. That messes with the tone of the movie. But then you would see something like Being There, which, 79, and that's what was so weird about that and those Kubrick movies and everything, is that they were shot like dramas, quote unquote, shot like dramas. And it is a thing that I'm always coming up against when you're shooting a comedy and people go, well, wait, this looks dark. There is a thing even now where it's kind of like you have to be able to see everything and everything needs to be bright. Small rooms, bright, and it never works for me for some reason. But I'm going to get you Sucka. That movie, I think, is really underrated.
This feels like one of those films where somebody's like, I'm going to put every single thing I've ever done or ever thought into this, and this is my one thing to get people to pay attention.
Exactly. Again, it's my favorite thing in comedy, but you just tell like they're just making themselves laugh and they're just being goofy. That is one of my favorite things to do is you really discover someone's work and go chronologically and you kind of watch them grow is really exciting. Yeah. And it gives you, and you see where they figure things out and they stop making the same kind of move, and things like that.
I am infatuated with the screenplay for one of these movies, Melvin and Howard.
Oh yeah.
That was a case where, as I was learning what I liked about writing, Bo Goldman's script for that film is such a Shaggy Dog approach to what you think that movie's going to be. Yeah. Which is all about the court case and everything. Yeah. It's really not that film at all.
And to have the balls to have that opening that goes on forever.
It's like a 25-minute opening, and it's just those two characters, and because there's no preamble, because we're not set up to expect what it's going to be or anything, it just kind of has this, it evolves at its own pace.
Yeah, that's what I love about it. I love that about it, and I love Mary Steenburgen in it.
She's amazing.
Yeah, I really like her in the movie. Demi just had the balls to just have these tone shifts, too. I mean, Something Wild has the craziest one, I think, but Melvin and Howard, you just never knew where it was going. It could go either way. And that's what I liked about it. It felt very just genuine and real. And like you said, it goes at its own pace. And, Jason Robards is great in it. But when I think about this movie, I think about the opening. I just think that I can't believe this is still going. Yeah. It defies all screenwriting structure, how a movie's supposed to go, everything. It's like... it's like high and low where you're going, oh, we haven't left this apartment yet. And then when we do leave the apartment, we're not going to go to our main character anymore. And you're like, wait, no, you can't do that.
It's not how movies work.
And then I go, I'm staying in LA too long. Yeah. I've been hanging out in this thing too long where there has to be rules, and you're hearing the executive note in your head going, guys, we got to get Mary Steenburgen in within the first 10 minutes. We got to get this character. You watch Fargo, Frances McDormand doesn't show up until, 30 minutes into the movie. Yeah. And that people would go, no, you can't do that. And I think that's why I like these movies.
Did you see the Florida Project this year?
Yeah, I did.
Early Demi. What Sean Baker did in that film kind of reminds me of Early Demi, which is there's a real respect for the fact that people on the margins.
Let's start with episode 1. I felt like when we were discussing the show last season that you didn't necessarily have a master plan for the arc of Barry. Did you know when you sat down at the start of season 4 where you wanted to take the story?
I will say, like, during season 2, I had an idea of what the very ending of the show would be. That was very kind of clear in my head. But how we got there, I didn't know how we got there. And how we got there was much different than the way I initially thought it would go down. But how it ends, that came through pretty much the way I thought it would. But so when we sat down in the summer of 2020, so the pandemic happened, and we said, well, can we write season 4 while we're waiting for the world to reopen? And we had a Zoom room, and we just started talking about season 4. And in talking about season 4, we had to go back and kind of realize what was wrong with season 3. And we started making things around. So 3 and 4 in my mind kind of are like one big season. It kind of all links together in a way. Hopefully the whole show does that from pilot to the final episode. But definitely 3 and 4 were written and kind of at the same time. So, but it was the thing that happens every year. We're like, all right, he's in prison. What happens? What do we do? And I think the thing that always helps is when you approach it from a character standpoint and an emotional standpoint of what are they feeling, and and how can we show that? And I think very early on, I had this idea of Barry having these visions, and that would help us kind of get out of the visuals of just being in a prison. That was kind of one of the first ideas.
Did you know, as you were setting down to start 3, that 4 would be the end? Or was there was there a version of this show that had 7 or 12 seasons?
No, there was never a version that had 7 or 12 seasons, but we definitely didn't know where it was going to head. And then as we were mapping it out, and we got towards the end of the season, it started to feel. I remember talking to Duffy Boudreau and Liz Sarnoff, 2 of the writers, and saying, it really feels like this is where it wants to end. But I didn't want to fully say that until we started writing the scripts, because sometimes when you start writing it, this is just an outline form. And then when you write it, things start happening and shifting, and you go, oh gosh, this might happen, and that could be another season. But as we were writing the scripts, by the time we got to, I would say, episode 4, I was like, yeah, this is the last season. And we had written the first 4 episodes by the time we started to shoot. That was, or I think we had written the first 6 episodes, or had versions of the first 6 episodes, but 1 through 4 were really solid by the time we started to shoot. And I was able to tell HBO and the cast, like, hey, this is the last season,
How did they react to that? Was it like, thank goodness, or no, keep going? Like, what is that like with the network?
Bittersweet, and I think HBO understood.
You directed every episode this season. Why did you make that decision?
Well, that came partially from 2 things. One, as the show progressed, I became more and more confident as a director. And as I think I've told you, it's a thing I've always wanted to do. So it was, I was really chomping at the bit to do more of it. And then by the time we were on season 3, I mean, Alec Berg directed 3 episodes, but, I was definitely there kind of, stating my opinion and probably driving him crazy. And, I just became very, very clear with how I thought things should be and look. And then I think Aida Rogers, our producer, I remember it was our last night of shooting season 3. We were shooting the scene where Barry and Kusno are in front of Jim Moss's house at night. It was that confrontation scene, and we were shooting that. And Aida Rogers and I were talking about. She said, "How's season 4 coming along?" Because I was already talking with the writers. We were trying to get outlines and things ready for 4 because we were going right into it. And she said, I think you should direct every episode, because I think I can do it in the schedule where you won't die, but I think it's worth it, because you have such a clear vision. And I think actually production wise, it makes more sense because it's all coming. There's no game of telephone anymore. It's very clear. It's coming straight from you. It's not coming from other people, or, well, Bill said that he wants it this way. And do you know what I mean? And so she's like, I just think it'll streamline the whole process. And it did. Our hours on the show between her and Gavin Kleintop and our department heads, we were a well-oiled machine for season 4. I mean, we would try to keep it maximum 8 to 10 hour days. And if we did a 12-hour day, that meant oh my God, something went wrong. We were moving really fast. And so it was a grind, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
I know a handful of people, and I think it's only really a handful of people who've done what you did, who have directed the entirety of a season. Sam Esmail comes to mind. I think he did that for Mr. Robot at some point. And it sounds like it's pretty grueling, particularly on the director, the filmmaker, in addition to, you appearing in the show and, conceiving of episodes and things. I mean, were you totally burnt out on the series by the time you got to the end?
I would say by the last block, by the time we were doing episodes 7 and 8, and then we had to do pickups for episodes 3 and 4 at the end of the season, I was really burnt out. Yeah. But it was still fun. We were doing great stuff, but I was really, I went a little bananas, not like I went crazy, but I was just exhausted. I was really, really exhausted. But Aida was able to schedule in a way where we had these hiatus weeks, and I was able to. But the problem was during the hiatus weeks, it was this thing where it's like you have 2 days off. You should do nothing these 2 days. Don't do anything. But then on these 2 days, we need you to write episode 8. Because we need to start prepping episode 8. So then I would wake up early in the morning. I would sleep for 2 days, and then I'd wake up early in the morning and then just write and call Duffy Boudreau and call Liz Sarnoff and write and kind of send them pages and call the actors and say, I'm singing this or that, and then you get it done. And then you're sending stuff to the department heads. And then you send it to HBO and they go, yeah, it's great, and so it was a filmmaker friend of mine pointed out to me that in the past year and a half, I've essentially directed, created what amounts to 4 movies, 4 2-hour movies in the past year and a half. Yeah, no, I will say what got me through it was, I stress ate like crazy. I put on like 25 pounds in that, doing season 3 and 4, I put on a lot of weight. And then it was actually really fun.
Did you set specific goals for yourself as a filmmaker before the season of things you wanted to try, or, even from a, structural or technical perspective that you wanted to?
Not really. I just wanted it to feel the big of a piece, I just wanted to all feel like it was one visual language for the whole thing. And a lot of that is kind of, I think this season, directing wise, I felt much more intuitive and less, you do get to a place where you go, oh, let's do a big motorcycle chase, and it's like, can we do something like that and push yourself to do something like that and try? It was more of almost going the other way with it and saying like, well, what's the kind of, go to quieter moments or things that are more, what's the best way to direct this to get the story across? It was coming up with the story first and understanding the emotions and everything. And it's like, well, then how can we, show that cinematically in a way that's interesting. And so, and having confidence and knowing that like, oh, this is just a scene with like 2 shots, and it's just 2 people talking to each other. And that's all it needs to be. You don't need to do anything else, So it's just having the kind of confidence to do that. Where I think in the past, I'd be like, oh, let's have the camera way over here and do this and do that, because you're anxious and you want to like try stuff,
I was wondering if the acclaim you received for that, the motorcycle chase, if that made it 6. Did that make it easier for you to have that feeling of like, you know what, let's just do what makes sense here and not necessarily over imagine?
Yeah, the acclaim never really does anything. It's more of like you get it out of your system, but also if you're writing episode season 4 and something came up that made sense, then you would try it, So that season, it just made sense that it's like, oh, we could have a big chase sequence if we wanted to here. Oh, that's fun. Yeah, let's do that, or the Ronnie Lilly episode in season 2, where it just went, let's see a hit go wrong and make that the whole episode of the hit gone wrong. But this season, it just felt it was much more driven by the characters. It does have hopefully a narrative, a propulsive narrative, which I personally really like. But hopefully, it's all driven by character. That was
you still have a few moves that I think we'll talk about as we go through the season. There's some sequences that are exciting and unique.
Yeah, I think it was like a little thing each episode would have a sequence in it that we thought was interesting. That Carl Hersey, the DP, and Eric Schoonover, the production designer, and then the editors, Ali Greer and Frankie Gutman, and our sound mixers, Matt and Sean. Like they're all, there are certain things we get to them that you got really stoked on. Oh, this is really exciting. We get to do this.
Let's dig into episode 1. It's called Yikes. It's written and directed by you. It being David Warshawski, I couldn't help but think of There Will Be Blood.
Was he in There Will Be Blood?
Yeah, he plays one of the Standard Oil men.
Yeah, I need to see that movie. I've only seen that movie once. I saw it at the premiere.
What?
I've not seen it since. Yeah.
Wow, I'm shocked to hear that.
That's one of the few things I've ever shot with more than one camera. We've shot it with 3 cameras to give it kind of a one-man show feeling with like zooms and stuff. But it was really funny. Also, like, I got to give Paul Rudd credit because I was telling him about the sequence and I go, I need good music playing when it comes in. And Paul said, oh, you should get that choir singing Desperado. There's a children's choir singing Desperado. That was Paul Rudd's pitch.
Today we're talking about the 5th episode of the 4th and final season of HBO's Barry. This episode is called Tricky Legacies. It is written by you, it is directed by you, and it is the most unusual episode in show history. We have vaulted 8 years into the future.
I think the whole idea of going into the future was pretty early on in the writing process of season 4, and it was this thing of what if everybody got what they wanted. But initially, episode 5 was going to be kind of catching up with everybody. And we had written that version, and just something about it seemed to kind of hit the ground running in a way that was, I don't know, just not that interesting to me. And I remember talking to Amy Gravitt about it, and we both were going, oh, well, maybe it'd be nice to kind of settle into something. And then I remember I went on a walk with Duffy Boudreaux and just started talking about what Sally and Barry's life would have been like for the last 8 years. And then thought, oh, it could be this episode. And I said, what if we just did a whole episode that was basically just them? And we just slowed everything down for an episode. And then I ran home and wrote it. I actually wrote this episode pretty quickly. It was kind of like just in one or two sittings. It kind of came pretty fast.
But were you trying to like not confuse us, but like disorient us or keep us on the back foot somehow, the way you kind of shot and wrote this episode?
No, I mean, that wasn't part of it. It was just kind of, we had these other ideas of how to show that you've moved ahead and all this. And it all just felt like a lot of nothing. And I just said, just cut to it. We'll cut to black and then you're there. And now it's been 8 years, And if people, because it was interesting because episode 4 came out and, I never read stuff. I'm always, I hear about it secondhand and friends texting like, the internet's really confused by the ending of episode 4. And I was like, well, hopefully they'll stick with it, but I mean, that's all you could really do. But yeah, I mean, I just, to me, it was just more of, we do episodes like this where it's like, Ronnie Lily or the motorcycle chase, and it's usually action oriented. And it was like, what if we did one that everything just is quiet? Was
there any part of you that wanted this entire episode to have none of the story?
It was just kind of a balance, because initially this episode, when I wrote it, it was half Barry. You're cutting between Barry and Sally and Gene and where they were at. The Barry and Sally stuff was just way more interesting to me. I thought you needed to keep the story moving somehow.
As we're talking, it's, the show's about to premiere its 3rd season. Just how does it feel for you to sort of be on this precipice of having it back out in the world after you've been working on it for quite a while? It's
very strange, especially, we had our premiere last night, and it's very strange. It's a bit surreal, but it's a cliche, but it's true. Once it's done and it's out there, it's kind of like it's not yours anymore. I've been sitting with this for 3 years in a lab, with the writers for pre-production and production and then post-production, and it's been this long process. And now here we are, and you're just kind of like, oh, this is nuts, But yeah, there's a funny feeling of, I don't really need to watch it. I'm writing season 4 right now. And, you never want to go towards a theme. You never want to start and go, well, the theme is about this, and then we're writing everything, so it's about that. Because it has to be kind of alive, and it has to kind of move it the way it wants to go. And then it isn't until you kind of write everything and then you sit and look at it and you're talking about it with, the writers, that suddenly, that comes up. And that line, forgiveness has to be earned. Liz Sarnoff came up with that line. I remember in a writer's meeting. And I went, oh, because we were talking about the scene, and it's like, yeah, the scene in the backyard with Hank and Barry, it's like not there yet. It's the scenes usually start and it always seems a bit surfacey, it's kind of a bit like there's funny things being said, but nothing really happens. So then you have to like keep at it and digging at it and digging at it. And then you go, it's a thing I'm as the actor in the writer's room, I'm always going, well, if I'm playing NoHo Hank, I would be asking these questions. And if I'm playing Barry, I'm asking these questions. And so in doing that, what tends to happen is that we simplify it. Everything just becomes much more simplified in terms of the emotion. And again, what always ends up happening is it starts out kind of like you're like designing a mousetrap. Like, oh, what if this happens? And then that causes this thing to go off and this. And it's all kind of plotty and,
Mm-hmm.
It's nicer when it's like, well, what would they do? And you let the characters kind of drive it. And then by Barry making this really kind of having this really dumb idea. And then you kind of backtrack from that and going, okay, well, if he's going to have that idea, then let's show that he's in a really bad place. He's really lost when we go in with him, just so I can buy on some level that this is where he would want to go, So that then informs the episode, and then that informs the next episode, and then, and so on in each scene. I think all the characters, it's a cliche, but they all have parts of you in it. They all have parts of you that you, it's impossible not to, there's always a little part of you. You at least have to understand the emotion behind what the person's going through so you can write it. It might not have to be something you have like experience with, but at least you've seen it and you can kind of, identify it.
Do you remember the first piece of comedy or one of the first that made you laugh really hard as a kid, something you really connected to?
It was a moment in Take the Money and Run where Virgil Starkweather, to get out of prison, they inoculated him with a new vaccine. They tested a vaccine on him to get him out of prison, and they said it was a success with one side effect. For 48 hours he was a rabbi, and it did. Woody Allen as a rabbi, and goes, the reason the Israelites, like the minute just the hard cut to him, made me laugh. Like it was such a shock. Like I wasn't expecting it. And I just remember I fell off my bed laughing. I just like howling laughing because it really was just, it subverted your expectations.
You're in the process of finishing Barry as we speak, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We have to mix episodes 7 and 8.
When you watch the first cut of any episode, you've said that you have a full-on mental breakdown.
Yeah. That's true.
Did that happen again putting together this season?
Yes. It's, I can set my watch to it. I go in with the editor, I sit, they start it, and then I have to see myself. I have to hear my voice. And then all the cool things I wanted to do are not really there.
How quickly do you make that realization?
It's like just you feel it. It's instinctual. The minute it starts, you're just like, this is wrong. This whole thing is wrong. I don't know what I was thinking. And then it's just this long process of getting it back to what you initially hoped it would be. And it gets there, and in some ways it changes. Things change in a way that help it.
It's sort of a gradual acceptance of your own inadequacies.
Yeah. That you're mediocre and you have a weird sounding voice, and I look more and more like my dad with each season. You know what I mean?
Is that a problem?
Yes. No offense, Dad.
You share the same name, too.
Yeah. I'm a junior. So I just don't want people to like think that my dad got a show.
Because it would just inflate his ego too much.
Yeah, even more than it actually is.
Right.
I mean, he'll be going crazy. No, my dad's a very sweet guy.
So eventually you've come to terms with this new season. Are you feeling marginally better now?
Yeah, now that it's coming out and I'm getting like nice responses from people, but mostly, you do it to make the thing. So it's like in the making of the thing is where it's at. So for me, it's when we sit in the mixing stage
which is the kind of last stage in the whole process, and you sit back and watch it and go, you know what, this came out all right.
Well, George Saunders, who we were talking about before, likes to say that your job as a writer is to present the question, not...
Yeah, that checkoff thing is like you present the problem, not the answer. That's true, and I'm a big proponent of that.
Throughout this season, there is a thematic and aesthetic connection to Goodfellas in a way.
It wasn't like consciously was like, oh, let's do Goodfellas, but you watch something 20 times over 30 years or something, it becomes ingrained in you. It wasn't until I was mixing the last episode of season 2 that I was like, oh my God, this is Taxi Driver. This is embarrassing.
Was that a good realization?
Yeah, I mean, everybody has those things. Like I've said that to other filmmakers, and they're like, "Well, everything is that." Like Scorsese's doing Godard and Fassbender, and you know what I mean, and all these other things. But no, it wasn't conscious. But I think the Coppa oneer and Goodfellas is a great example of a oneer that actually tells a story. Some oneers that you see, they don't need to be a oneer. You go, why does this all need to be one shot? When Travis Bickle shoots Harvey Keitel in the doorway, that's another scene because the way it's framed is from the point of view of someone sitting on a stoop across the street. So we, the audience, are just sitting on a stoop across the street and we're watching two guys argue and one guy shoots the other guy, and then Scorsese just stays there and you just watch Travis Bickle and then he sits down. So now it's just us and Travis Bickle. And in the background, it's brilliant. There's a TV on. Mm-hmm. Like you're seeing an apartment behind him and there's a TV on in the background. So you just get this sense that life is being led around you and this violence is taking place while everybody else is just going about their day. And it just affected me in a massive, massive way. Art Institute of Phoenix, a kid there said, Scottsdale Community College, they actually have an ARRI BL. And I went, oh, wow. And they have a couple of ARRI S's and they had like film cameras and they had Avids. And this is in 1997. So I just thought, holy shit, I got to get my hands on that because digital wasn't what it is today. And so I went there, enrolled, immediately spent like $3,000 on a short film that I never finished.
Do you remember those early conversations you had about making Barry?
Well, initially, we were talking about making another show.
About Tulsa, Oklahoma. And a guy I grew up with. And I was going to play that guy. And then it just, we had the first episode lined out. And then after that, I was like, this really doesn't go anywhere. And I'll admit, Breaking Bad had just ended. And I don't watch a lot of television. I tend to just watch a lot of movies and I read. I liked Breaking Bad. And I was talking to Alec, I was like, it'd be good to have something that has like stakes to it and that moves and has like a narrative propulsion to it. And I also read like comic books, but not necessarily, like these DC Vertigo books, and their stuff would have like some depth to it, but also it moved. It's like, I want to do something like that. We just started talking it out. And then, our first drafts of it were like the acting world was great. But the Hitman world, it was more inspired by movies. Mm-hmm. It was like the Hitman were all at a barbecue together and like all this stuff. And then Amy Gravitt and Casey Bloys at HBO read it and their note was like, the acting world seems great. Hitman world, I don't know what this is. And they were right. And then that was when I was like, well, what if he's a Marine? And then suddenly that just brought it all into place. Writing forever, I would write so much I'd write full screenplays and then you back up and you're like, oh, this is just about other movies, or this is like movie logic. Not like it's like completely ripping off a thing, but it's like, oh, I got really inspired and I wrote this thing and it's got cool sequences in it, but the emotion wasn't anything personal that I could really latch onto and write from. So that's what Barry was the first thing I really started to do that with. What the big thing was too was being able to have the confidence to go, I'm a good writer and I think I can direct. And that was always the thing. I had zero confidence even saying out loud, but it was nice being able to have a table read and go, this stuff is working. And again, it's not just me. It's Alec Berg, Duffy Boudreaux, Liz Sarnoff. Takes a village.
It takes a village, a lot of people. But getting that confidence was very new. That was helpful.
Just being able to say that.
Yeah, just being able to say without mumbling it to myself, like, oh, I'm a writer or a director, you know.
That's how those Terrence Malick movies, or at least the ones I love, feel. I mean, especially, Days of Heaven, it's the same thing of being out on this land and this love triangle going on. But then also to say, well, in this giant scheme of this land and this play, like, what does this really matter,
Yeah,
it's kind of, like, the location of that is very beautiful, but also vast and oppressive, or, and then the locusts coming in and taking over.
Yeah.
It's like you have no real control over this thing, and you're. So I watch those films, and I don't know if it's meant to be this way, but it's like, this, industry coming in, the plane, the train, all this stuff, and your little drama is really insignificant to this giant other thing, because locusts are going to come and take you out.
This is sort of why I think people really were drawn to Sopranos a little bit too, because they would start to do this. There would be these little elements that didn't really go anywhere in the plot, but they sort of built up a sort of credibility to the world that you were looking at. And it would just be a simple thing like what you're talking about here, where somebody would just say something, and it wouldn't go anywhere in the plot, but it would just make the world more real.
Sopranos did it better than anybody, and I think they did it in the boldest ways, where, I mean, I remember there'd be whole seasons where people would go, what was that episode even about? Like, how is that? I would have TV writer friends go, wait, but that doesn't move the story forward. And it was like, but it feels real. And
that's cool.
And it makes me feel, it doesn't move the story forward, but I relate to it. This feels very, like, not relatable, like I kill people or whatever, but I've been in that room where I understand it. It has a ring of truth to it.
Did you ever see the Hitchcock film Rope? Are you a fan of Rope?
Yeah, there is this thing in Rope that I always think of that I thought was so brilliant. It was I think it's Farley Granger playing the piano. He's playing it, and then as Jimmy Stewart is asking them questions, and he's getting intense, and the piano playing gets more and more kind of anxious, and it gets faster and faster. I just thought that was like such a brilliant idea.
I mean, if I look at a Hitchcock film like Vertigo, I watch that film like every couple of years. I still don't understand it. I don't get it. I'm like, but it makes me chew on stuff,
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's a movie about obsession. I don't know if you're supposed to care about the plot. I watched it again with one of my kids, and they're like, this is corny. Like, also like, wait, what? How would that happen?
Weird.
Like, so if you take it literally, I can understand, like, it doesn't work as a story. I don't know if it totally works,
Right.
But yeah, there's something about it that you could, I think that the strength of Vertigo is almost out of, it's kind of like a cinematic thing, but it's also a thing you only can get in literature. Because sometimes in literature, you'll read a thing and I go, yeah, the story is kind of, but what it's about is this, I'm in this guy's head, and his obsession is really fucking interesting and dark and disturbing. He makes this woman dress up like the lady, it's really strange, like what this guy needs. It's not my favorite Hitchcock movie, but I think it's like interesting and kind of perverted, and
David Lynch films are like this on steroids. I mean, there's like almost no pretense for the plot anymore.
And the stuff of his that hasn't worked for me were the stuff where I felt like he was like, I'm David Lynch, Yeah. It's like, he does get to a place where he's like, I'm David Lynch for a second, but it's not bad, but it's just not the same.
Yeah.
But something like Blue Velvet, Blue Velvet is just like I think just one of the great movies, and I've grown. I remember not really liking Mulholland Drive when I first saw it, and now I really, really enjoy it. I think it's like,
I need to see that again because I didn't like it, but I need to rewatch it. Yeah,
I think that movie is pretty great. But
is it?
Yeah, Blue Velvet's the one though that I've watched. I've seen that.
Oh, that had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've seen that movie.
It scared the hell out of me. Yeah,
it just and that again, that thing of why is the most the most entertaining person in that movie the most evil? We start shooting third season of Barry in 2 months.
Oh my gosh! Wow,
Which just like hit me.
Wow. I'm fully. I had watched the first season, and then now I just watched the second season, and it wallops you. Like when I was watching Barry, I was like, yeah, this is the thing that Bill and I have in common is that we're both obsessed with comedy.
Yeah.
And we're both obsessed with cinema.
Yeah.
And
No, totally.
drama.
Yeah.
And like, and real, and like, one of the things I was thinking when I was watching it is like you and I also have this thing in common, which is we're both like, we're professionals, but we're students always,
Yeah.
like students of learning.
Yeah.
Sponging, learning everything. And like you did that, like even after you'd been on SNL and you were a TV star, you like went to work on South Park just to learn story.
Yes. I think I think you did it with Pixar too. It was like a similar thing.
I sort of like popped in there. Yeah.
You go into
tried to learn from
Pixar
them.
and go, how do you guys make these stories work so well? And you realize it's like, oh, we're just never satisfied and we have 5 years to figure it out.
It's like you went to work on South Park because you were a fan of it and you were like, I'd like to learn story and structure and sort of how they construct this sort of watch together. And then like, but I can see it in Barry. Like I feel like I can see. Do you feel like you learn things from Matt and Trey that you use when you make Barry?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean the thing I always learned from them when I first came in is I thought, we kind of had the first couple weeks is just like anything. You're pitching a bunch of stuff and it's all funny and loose.
Yeah.
And it's that feeling you have in the lunchroom with your friends, which I always say is the funniest I've ever been in my life, which is you're just relaxed. There's nothing writing on it. You're not being paid. You're super comfortable. You don't care what anybody thinks of you. And you're just loose and being funny. And so it's getting into that place with everybody. It's a very small group. And then it was like we got a lot of material. And then I watched Trey and Matt put it together and realizing how much emotion plays into it, how much of it is following the emotion. Because I would come in initially and go, oh, what would be an interesting thing is if this happened, and this happened. And it was all, what I realized I was like, it was all plot. It was all plotty stuff. And that was when Trey taught me the thing, which I mean, a lot of people have heard is, it's not this happened and this happened, this happened, is this happened, so therefore this happens.
Yes,
so
that's
therefore
right.
This happens.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So then this happens. And once he said that, you realize how many good stories and also the really great stand-ups like you and Mulaney and, people I love watching have that inherent thing, which is why does this work? And you realize like, oh, it's all kind of causal. It kind of moves forward.
Causality is always the thing that my director and I are honing in like the final year of the process. Is exactly what you're saying, which is the way we phrase it is so then instead of and then. Yeah. If you're doing and then, it's like that's fun. Yeah. That's funny, but it's not going to make the whole thing move and propel. And like when I watch Barry, it's like, and so then this, and so then this, so then this, so then this. And then you're like, and then next thing you know, you're like in that credit sequence and it's like chirping crickets or whatever your Foley work is at the end.
Well, that's like, I kind of learn, to answer your question, I would go, well, here's all my ideas for the season. And I would start the first day of writing off of me going, here's kind of what I think for the next, what season 2 could be. And I think I had something completely different, or the way season 2 ended. And the writers went, and I'm sorry to say this is embarrassing, it dealt with a viral video. And the writers went, Bill, that sucks. And I was like, no, it'll be good. And they're like, no, you can't do a viral video. And I was like, okay. And then you start erasing that. You erase this, you erase that.
Because they felt like it was a trope. Like it
was a trope, and it wasn't emotional. It was plotty. It's getting all your bad. It's a thing is like, be wrong fast. You're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
So be wrong as fast as you can. So I just go, this is me being wrong, and I'm going to pitch it like I love it.
Yes.
Because this is where I'm at today. So it's like, ba-da-da, and then Barry, he has a viral video goes out
Yeah.
and people are like, oh no. And everybody goes, what? It's very difficult. And it's a long process of being wrong. And that's why I learned in the South Park room and in the Pixar room is you're wrong a lot. And then suddenly something clicks and you're like, oh wow, that's the scene I'm avoiding, is that scene where all those guys are like, good job. Cause that's kind of a dark, weird thing to think of. It's so much easier and fun to come up with a fun goofball thing.
What's funny, because I asked Yorma, our mutual friend, what's the most remarkable thing about working with Bill? And he goes, Bill is endlessly interested in comedy and loves comedy.
Yeah, I get very excited when someone does something new or interesting, or, you just want to share it with everybody. Judd Apatow, first thing he said to me, first meeting he had with me, my first season of SNL, was like, you need to learn how to write. And I wrote 7 really terrible scripts.
No kidding.
I was just writing all the time and they were awful. And that's what prompted me to go, well, maybe I should go hang out here. What am I not getting?
Wow.
And they were all plot. I just realized it was all, and this happens, and here's this joke and this bit. And I'm not good at writing jokes. I'm not good at when I was at SNL, that's why, certain people like Kristen or Fred or people like that could write on their own. And I needed...
Yeah, to bounce stuff.
I needed Mulaney, I needed Simon Rich, or, America Sawyer. And I needed people to me go, maybe something in this world, or is this. But that joke rhythm, that thing that when we were on Trainwreck, you and Schumer have that in spade, and I would be watching it going like, oh God, they just have that rhythm where they know how to flip the sentences and it lands on a punchline. You know what I mean? And I just find that so fascinating. So I'm always trying to, and that's why I read The Onion every morning. Yeah. Because it's like trying to I appreciate that so much, where it takes you on a place where you think you're going here and then the last word. And certain people just have that inbred in them, and I didn't. So I was writing sketches. I was writing scripts, I will say, that were not funny.
Yeah, totally.
They were like situational. I did that with Book of Mormon. I saw that for 3 years before it came out because they were workshopping it. And you saw how so much of the first half initially took place in Utah.
Oh my gosh.
And then they realized all this Utah stuff, which was hilarious, just wasn't moving the story forward. And it taught me oh yeah, you got to be really tough with your material, you know, or one of the coolest things is become friendly with George Saunders and talking to him about how he writes his short stories, and him saying, oh, I'm just honing it down to the last word. There's actually a video of it where he will take you through a process of cutting things down to its most, and you go, oh, that's why your stuff works so well for me, because it is just you're reading the most essential version of something. But he had to have the giant mound of clay that he had to mold and throw out, and I'm fascinated by that stuff.